Hey everyone, this is the first ever YouTube produced version of the Web3 Ed podcast. Usually, what I do is I actually just take little clips and post it on here, but today we're going to do something special. We're going to give you a full episode. This is normally reserved for our Spotify and Anchor listeners. For those that don't follow us on there, we are Web3 Ed with an apostrophe between the E and the 3. On this week's episode, I speak with my friend and fellow entrepreneur, Bodo. His company and all of his journey and socials can be found using the links below in the show notes here. Just wanted to give a quick shout out before we get going with the interview. First, this podcast is sponsored by the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation. If you don't know what that is, go to Blockchain Acceleration Foundation. We're on socials, we're on web. What our mission is as a nonprofit is to unite student clubs across different colleges, whether you're in the US or abroad, and just help you learn, get grants, get connected, all of that good stuff. So great organization I'm part of personally and would love to have you as a member. Second, I do run a company called EduCoin. We're about to rebrand, but as of now, we are educoin.store. And our goal is to build a learning management system that isn't built for universities so that small groups and companies can host their own educational content, classes, badging, even job boards, all without having to build their own tools and websites, kind of connecting and allowing students to build their own degrees. So check it out. Send me an email if you're interested in learning more about that. Without further ado, let's get started with the podcast. I hope you enjoy. And thanks to my buddy Alodiba for making the soundtrack on Spotify. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Web3 Ed podcast. I'm here with Bodo, who is my friend from a while back now and another member of the Ed3 DAO. So welcome to the show, Bodo.
Hi, good to join you.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the ed tech space. You have a great story, so feel free to share it.
Coming into the ed tech space took a while. I didn't want anything to do with education once I left school at 18. My background is in entrepreneurship. I developed a, uh, a learning management system that was taken on by Google. And since then, I've been focusing my effort on collective intelligence. How do we rapidly scale the rate at which we can learn things, and then also apply that learning to actually do things? But in a context of putting the power on the learners and the experts as opposed to anyone else. So really empowering the learners to take control. So I've been working for the last 10 years on this research project, collective intelligence type engine. How do we build this? Started off in refugee camps and conflict zones, mainly in East Africa, and then moved to higher ed and K-12. Doing some experiments there, but also experiments in non-traditional learning environments in India, Japan, US, and Europe mostly, and a bit in Africa where I grew up. But that's a bit of the background, and since then we together with three other co-founders who all have interesting backgrounds in AI. We've created this new AI product. It's a part of three things that we're building. This AI product is a tool that can rapidly accelerate the rate at which we can generate e-learning content. So think of it like a generative AI, but instead of you providing it a text prompt, you could provide it any documents you have. And then it would rapidly generate e-learning content from that. So if we think of the problem at the moment, it takes teachers and instructional designers and people like people in that role. It takes them hours and hours and hours to generate this content, generate interesting e-learning content from static documents that are generated. It takes them hours, but our AI is able to do that in minutes. So that's part of what we do. And then the reason why we got to talk was because of the protocol. And that's something we're building on top of this AI too.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So
Yeah.
before we get into the technical and the AI side, which I had the pleasure of demoing a little bit and talking to you about already,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about your background, how that's shaped what you're working on now? So first, I want to talk about your first company. We have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show. How did you build that LMS, and what was it like selling to Google? And I guess, I know Google does a lot now with AI. Are you using anything that you learned there? Has that been a piece of what you're doing now? Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, that wasn't my first. My first was actually a company that processed Australian visas. This was a really long time ago. But since my process all along was um, um, tapping into the collective intelligence of people around me to try and solve problems really, really quickly. I didn't know anything about Australian visas, for example, but we needed to build a solution. So who can help me with parts of that project, right? So I needed someone who specialized in IVR systems. So who can I reach out to that? I need someone who specialized in legal compliance. Okay, who can I reach out for that? And then bolting on, their advice and these other people's advice, bolting it together and generating something viable from that. That's the approach I've been using for a long time, and it's just moved and morphed into, well, collective intelligence is huge, has huge potential, and not many people really tap into that. So let me try and build an engine for that. That's really how it goes. The experience with Google was pretty mundane. It wasn't a great exit. It was just 99% of things being things being sold to Google are just mundane, boring exits. And that was one of them. Mine was one of them.
Gotcha. Very cool. And did you stay with Google at all, just out of curiosity?
I worked at their campus, Mountain View campus, on and off for like 6 months. This was during that process. Um, yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. And are they still, heavily in the learning space? I know Google Drive and tools are used by teachers, obviously, but is it still something they're doing? Do you know much about that by chance?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially with their work on AI tools, but they've got Google Tools for Educators. They've got Google Classroom, which is being used by, I can't remember the name, 400 million educators around the world. I mean, it's huge. They've got obviously Chromebooks, which have totally saturated the market here in the US, and these are all geared towards educators. So they have a big presence in education. One of the goals, well, the primary goal of Google is to, I forget the exact way they phrase it, but it's to categorize and make accessible human information. And part of that is making sure it's available as part of an educational framework. They're not really great at that, and they know, because at the moment, if you go to Google search, you have to go through tons and tons of pages to find what you want. But they're working on that, just like OpenAI is. So you've probably heard of their Bard AI, which is being launched very soon to try and compete with ChatGPT and OpenAI. But yeah, they're working on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, you had the encyclopedia and all of these textbooks that you would reference, obviously, for knowledge, and then Google kind of circumventing that, by making a publicly accessible
Yeah,
way
yeah,
to
yeah.
access knowledge. And now we're at AI, where it's actually generating answers and giving you the best curated version of all of these things you'd previously have to kind of click through and skim through.
Mhm.
So it's wild to see how it evolved. Another question I wanted to pick at with your background is, you talked about working in communities across the globe, Africa, India,
Yeah, yeah.
and it appears to me that learning might be disrupted more in those communities than in the US, where colleges are
I
slow to
hope so.
move
Yeah,
and have a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of power. Tell me some of what you've learned working in those communities and how you kind of view their approach to education and entering the workforce.
So one thing to note is I didn't work with any institutions. I focus my effort only on learners. Like, what do the learners need? If we can solve their problems, who cares about the institutions in that sense? Not that I don't care about institutions, but that was my focus. So what do learners want? Well, there's three things that learners want, and this is across the board, right? So speaking to refugee kids, speaking to 45-year-olds in India that are just tired of working in their jobs. What do they want? Well, one is, help me find things that inspire me. Help me find something that taps into my own intrinsic motivation. That is one. Two is, help me become a master at that. I want to become a master at it. I want to become good at it. And then three is, help me use that mastery to actually change the world in some way. Those are the three things that learners across the board need. and want. So let's solve those three problems. Let's not care about anything else. Let's solve those three problems, because if we can solve those, then that addresses most of the challenges.
For
That was
sure.
my focus. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, when you kind of move forward here, when you think a student or of a learner that's going to engage, do you think that it's going to come down to, I guess, learning a skill via the platform, or is it learning tools on the internet, such as like a
Yeah.
CRM or a coding language, or is
Mm.
it more, still holistic? I guess kind of when you were abroad, how was learning approached? Was it more specialized, I guess, and skill based, or is there still
Yeah.
a place for holistic learning?
Well, so I think learning is changing and changing all over the world, especially in the developing world, who are struggling far more than us here in the developed world. Um, they're actually ahead of the curve in what we can expect in the coming years. So what do I mean by that? So currently, if we look at public school systems, 45% of what jobs they are preparing our kids to move into will be obsolete by the time the kids graduate, right? So could we assume that 45% of what they're spending their time on is inefficiently spent? Another key stat is to look at lifelong learning. How much content within traditional courses, boilerplate courses, is relevant to the learner's current needs, right? What do they need to learn today? Well, if you look at that stat, 82% of content in courses is irrelevant to the learner's current needs. And that means they're learning stuff that they won't use for a long time. And when they start to use it, they will have forgotten it. And just think about when you went to college. What do you remember? Even just a semester past. Do you remember much of what you learned the previous semester? Do you remember much of what you learned the previous year? And the honest answer is like no. And so the reality is that that's a weird statistics, because does that mean that 82% of the effort being spent on traditional education is being inefficiently spent? I mean, that's a crazy thought. So how do we address that? Well, we address that by, those three things that I told you learners want. Help me find things that I want to learn. Help me become a master at that something, and then help me apply that directly to something that I need to do, right? If we can solve those three problems, we can get around those challenges. So the Knowledge AI tool set that we're building is Knowledge AI auto-generates e-learning content, bite-sized e-learning content from all the available content on the internet. So now we have that package. The second thing we're building is Knowledge Graph, which is, well, let's take these components we generated and let's map it out onto like a Google Maps for learning. And think of this as a multi-dimensional latent space. And then the third component we're building is the GPS to guide you through that. So now a student can query this structure. You know what? I want to do this. I want to do that, and it'll link them to the relevant content. But also, very importantly, because content isn't king, right? Content can maybe provide 20% of the learning experience. The other third of the learning experience is what you do with other learners. And then the final third of that learning experience is what you do with and your interactions with other learners and experts and quote unquote teachers that are around you, mentors and folks like that. So the protocol we are working on is there to address those things. And I think what it highlights is that educational institutions currently, especially in the developing world, are just ill-suited to prepare kids for the modern world, because they are 10, 20 years behind the ball. How do we solve that? Well, we solve that with this protocol where anyone can search for anything they want, and then auto-generate career paths career paths through this knowledge graph to get you to that learning goal as quickly as possible.
Sure. So let's go into that a little bit deeper. So there's
Yeah.
two kind of aspects of your product that are fascinating. One is a protocol, correct? And one is an AI product. Is that correct?
Yeah. You
Okay.
can think of, yeah.
Okay, cool. So walk me through a little bit, and I understand this at a base level, but it might be helpful for the listeners. So I come to your site, which is kind of a culmination of these two products. how is AI being used, and how is the protocol being used, more or less in layman's
Mm.
terms, and how is it helping me as a teacher, as a student?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
these, yeah,
So just for clarity, before I answer that question, the only product that is available today is Knowledge AI. So Knowledge Graph and Protocol is not yet available. It's only going to be available at the end of the year. But to answer that question, I can share with you a quick story of how this is used in the real world. So
sure.
while I was working on this with the team and everyone, my daughter suddenly got sick. She lost the use of her arms and she was paralyzed. She contracted a rare polio-like illness, and she lost the use of her arms. There was no treatments we could afford. There was only a 2% chance of recovery. And we spent the first few nights in the hospital researching what are possible solutions. So one of the possible solutions was to build a brain-controlled exoskeleton. Some research scientists were working on this, but their research was closed. It was very siloed research, but it showed pretty good results. So the question that I had with my daughter was, well, could we build our own? Well, there's no course for how to build a brain-controlled exoskeleton, right? There's no learning resource for how to do that. And this is a perfect example of the use cases that our learners need to have a solution for today, because we don't know what jobs are going to be available in the future. We don't know what problems they're going to need to solve in the future. So, and that was exactly the use case that we were in. So could we use the tools that we were building to try and figure this problem out? And so we used Knowledge AI to deconstruct everything we could about brain-controlled exoskeletons, right? So we used the first component to do that. Then we used Knowledge Graph to graph out a map. So you can think of this as a map of ignorance. It maps out all the concepts that we need to learn between our current understanding, which was almost zero. We didn't know anything about brain-controlled exoskeletons, all the way to the learning goal, which was to build a brain-controlled exoskeleton. So everything in between, we had to map out. What are all the concepts that lie between that? Let us map that out. And then we use Knowledge Protocol to not only map out the content, but also the learners and experts who are working on that same problem space. But notice that in this problem space, we didn't map out experts who are experts at brain-controlled exoskeletons, because there are really few of those. We mapped out experts at individual granular concepts that we needed to learn. So for example, we needed to learn about machine learning. So who's an expert at machine learning? We needed to learn about 3D printing. We needed to learn about electronics and about signal processing, all of these different concepts, and we needed to learn from, we needed to learn about. So the protocol put us in touch with those experts. And finally, the result was we actually built it. We built it in 7 months. We not only learned everything we needed to learn within 7 months, but we actually applied that learning to actually build the exoskeleton within 7 months. And this was completely unheard of. And because we were able to build it so quickly, we managed to build it at such a speed that it actually helped my daughter regain her motor neurons before the damage became permanent. And now she goes around the world and she shares that story. And the question I keep asking people is, would we have achieved that result had we used any other edtech platform or tool, or even gone to any of the top schools in the world? And I think the honest answer is no. We'd probably be stuck on first-year medical science. And so that's the type of use case I think this works really well with.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
and sorry to cut you off. So I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want so I understand correctly. Is this working best when you have a clear but yet complex goal that you need to learn towards? Is that where this really shines? Is that really what this is built to deconstruct those? Like, say it's not as simple as, okay, I want to learn how to use Figma to make a login screen. There's a million ways I can learn how to do that.
exactly.
Or,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to learn how to do customer support and take calls. Okay, that's a quick workshop. This is more, I have a really complex thing I want to learn, but I don't even know like how I would go about learning this,
Yeah.
everything I would need to consider. That's what this tool was kind of built for. Is that correct?
So if you recall those 3 points I mentioned about the learners want to, the first point is help me find things I want to learn. This tool helps you find things you want to learn. You can search for whatever you want. And this was just a key insight we got working in refugee camps. We initially tried to teach these learners we initially tried to teach them literacy and numeracy. But turns out that they don't want to learn that. I mean, sure, they think it's useful, but they want to learn how to become a bicycle mechanic, or how to become a nurse, or how to solve a particular problem. These are kids in a real world who want to, they want to do something real. Sure, they do want to learn how to read and write, but that's just a byproduct of them going towards one of their learning goals. And so we take that same approach. Well, we know that these are the three things that learners want. The first point is help me find things I want to learn. So what tool can do that? Well, this tool we're building can do that. You type in whatever you want to learn. In my case, I wanted to learn how to build a brain-controlled exoskeleton. In your case, that could be, I want to learn how to build a Web3 e-commerce platform. In someone else's case, that could be, I want to solve climate change, whatever the case may be. It's just a matter of providing the right tool to the learners to be able to then generate a map of all those concepts.
I see. So I think I'm starting to understand this now. Let me walk through an example I just kind of thought of, and let me know, because if this would kind of work in your use case.
Yeah.
So let's say I want to, something I hear from our students a lot, I want to start a business. I'm 19, I want to start my first business. Starting a business is actually a pretty complex problem, right? There's a lot. Yeah. So this your AI, which is live or going live or in a closed beta, right? It would first be able to break down business content for me. So, how to create a business plan, do marketing, do design, whatever, would go into this business that I'm building. The protocol then goes even deeper than that, connecting me to other people that have maybe started businesses or done unique aspects of the business, like a sales expert or something like that. Is that kind of the use cases that this could help solve for? Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, that was one of the key insights that we learned at the refugee camp, because we didn't have any access to teachers and traditional educators. So how do we prove that you know what you're doing? Well, we prove you know what you're doing by having you teach your friends. So we built in this mechanism by you can achieve mastery points at a particular concept, but you achieve that mastery by proving you know what you're doing by teaching your friends. But it's through this method that you're able to tap into the collective intelligence of people around you to help you learn and get towards your goal.
Very cool. And do you get some level of social capital, I guess, for being a teacher on this? Like, say I'm someone that wants to teach marketing, online, digital marketing or Discord management. I could not only create the classes on your platform, but I could kind of be a mentor and earn capital for helping others through the protocol. Right. Is that the deal?
That's part of it. That's part of the protocol. And that's how we incentivize people to actually do that teaching. That's also how we're able to determine, okay, who are the best at this particular concept? Because companies are going to want to employ you. If you're the best at writing smart contracts in Rust, I mean, and you've got proven points, mastery points in that concept, I mean, people are going to be knocking at your door to hire you. And so this is not only a mechanism by which we can determine who's the best at teaching, but also who's the best at actually doing these concepts.
Wow, that's awesome. So kind of something I'm thinking through here a little bit is right now, most teachers in academia, they do a lot of research and they kind of, like you said, they teach kind of a curriculum that might not be updated very often or relevant. How do you assure that these curriculums are relevant? How do you get the top, attract the top people that are awesome Rust developers or neuroscientists or AI builders? How do you get them to create content, upload it? I guess, is that part of the tool, is like they don't have to do as much anymore?
That is part of the protocol. That's part of the protocol. And it's one of the key challenges within traditional education. In traditional education, even public schools, the quote unquote algorithm that they use to vet someone's qualifications is almost like a black box. You don't know what's gone into that person's score. And that score is pretty high level, right? You don't know, well, they got a score of X, but what does that actually mean with this granular concept that I'm hoping they know about? So the protocol measures your skills at a very granular level, but also the algorithms that are used to determine the points you earn for particular activities that go towards a credential are all open, right? You know exactly how this person's earned those points. And if we determined later on, well, this algorithm we used wasn't very accurate, maybe we scored too many points or too little points, we can back propagate those points accordingly, right? This is something powerful. Another, just briefly, currently traditional education awards credentials, but they award it without a timestamp. and without the decay function. And this is critically flawed, because if I've learned computer science 10 years ago, but I decided, well, you know what, I instead want to become a chef. And now, so I got my PhD in computer science, but I haven't been practicing it for 10 years. Well, does that mean I still have a PhD in computer science, or at least the skills that represent that? The honest answer is hell no, I don't. And so the proof of learning point, the protocol takes into account the decay function of how you earn those points in the first place. And that's key.
Gotcha. So what's kind of the first steps? Because this is a massive vision, right? And I think there's two things that in this, high tech space that are often run counter to progress. First is UX, right? Because the tech sounds great, but can people actually use it? Can real world people actually get their hands in and, use it without bugs and without, being overwhelmed or confused by the jargon? And then two is just like functionally, is it solving a problem, or does it run counter to a system that would not want it to succeed? What steps are you taking to roll this out and functionally gain traction and real world use cases that are both economically feasible and also socially feasible?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, like, does this really work in the real world? Well, I think we at least have one good data point, and that is the story of my daughter and I. The honest answer is yes, this works. Does this work scalably? The approach we're taking is, let's launch Knowledge AI. We're going to launch Knowledge, well, it's launched now. Let's help educators rapidly produce bite-sized e-learning. As we do that, let's work with learners around the world to gather use cases very similar to my daughter and I. These are kids who want to solve a particular problem. Well, let's help them solve that particular problem. Let's help learners all around the world solve particular problems, and build valid stories around those, because and then we release knowledge graph and protocol at the end of the year. So we want to take it step by step. We think this can be used both within traditional education, but also more and more outside of traditional education, especially for example, kids in refugee camps, where this all started off. We think that this set of tools can be used across the board.
What does success look like for you here in this year?
Yeah.
So is your success number of users, number of teachers, number of programs or classes, I guess, created? What does success look like for you right now?
Success is all tied to those 3 points I mentioned. Can we help you find things that you want, that you are interested in, right? Can we explore that? Can we help you find those things? 2, can we help you become a master at that? So, and that we track through the protocol. And then 3, can we help you do something real with what you just learned? And that is again done through the protocol. So it's tying those 3 points directly into the success metrics. Those are the 3 points we want to achieve.
Cool. By the way, what AI are you using to power this initial tool? Is it the OpenAI API, or is it kind of something more proprietary?
Yeah, we use multiple different models, including OpenAI. We have our own data sets. We have quite specialized data sets. 2 of our co-founders have generated or have created previous AI companies. These are folks really into AI and into these models. So they've got a ton of models that they've been working on in the background over the last 10 years. Well, not 10 years, but 4 or 5 years. So it's a big mix.
Gotcha. And the reason I ask that is, as another business owner in the space, I think one of the things you'll see with whether it's a blockchain company or an AI company is, hey, a lot of this code's public, and a lot of these tools are meant to be, user empowered and user owned, and not such in a way where Facebook could kind of control and make all the rules. As a business owner, and you've done this isn't your first rodeo, how do you see this new wave of tech that is supposed to be lower cost, user centric, playing out as a viable business, and how do you make it proprietary and so that someone else can't just pop up and make the next knowledge AI or so have you?
Yeah, that's an important point, because we need to make sure that this is sustainable. So we need to make sure it's sustainable. The current approach we are looking at doing is actually it actually ties into my whole philosophy, and that is we need to make sure that this is also community owned in the long run. We need to make sure that the people that are contributing to the network, to the knowledge graph, and to the protocol are actually able to be part of this entity. The way we're doing that at the moment, and this is still in discussions with various folks, but the approach is we need to raise significant resources in the short term. We are generating revenues, so it could come from revenues, it could come from investment. If we raise investment, that requires us to respect the wishes of the investors to achieve X bit of return, right? As soon as we reach that X bit of return, the company then moves and transforms into a public benefit, or at least part of the structure moves to a public benefit. What that allows us to do is it allows us to, one, earn revenues through a profit model, two, raise funds through a VC model, but three, still make this a community-run project because the community understands these terms right from the start. They know that we are for-profit, they know we have investors, but they also know that if we hit this X return on investment, then suddenly the company, they can have an ownership in that company. So everyone's aligned. The community is aligned to hitting that X return on investment. The investors are aligned. The employees aligned. Everyone's aligned to the success of the company, and eventually it becomes community owned. I think that type of structure is important. We want to make sure that the learners and the experts that make this work have can get value out of the system, in addition to it being quite a useful tool in the short to medium term.
You mentioned you have revenue. Just quick question. If I'm a student or a teacher and I want to start using this product, how much do I got to pay, or kind of how does this work?
So we are figuring out pricing in the next 2 weeks. You'll be able to pay for Knowledge AI on a subscription basis, but know that Knowledge AI is a tool that's mainly geared towards teachers or instructional designers who need to rapidly generate e-learning content. So it's not a learner-centric product. Knowledge AI is not a learner-centric product. The learner-centric product is that of Knowledge Graph and Protocol, which are being launched at the end of the year.
Gotcha. So 2 questions, rapid fire to wrap us up here.
Yeah.
The first question is about students. So we have student listeners. They are builders, somewhat in the blockchain space, but really of anything. If they want to work for a company like yours or build their own tools that have AI or blockchain technology embedded in them, what would your recommendation be for them to get started, or to start either learning or working in the space?
Yeah, so I would use the approach of manually generating a graph for yourself. What is your goal? What do you want to do? Do a few Google searches, search for what it is that you're required to learn to get to that point. Break it up into small little bite-sized components. That's important. Don't try to boil the ocean. Just take it one step at a time. And then look at the content, but very importantly, content is only going to teach you about 20% of what you need to learn. You need to interact with other people doing that same thing, as well as other experts, right? So let's say you part of what you're doing is you need to learn Rust, or you need to learn how to build a smart contract. Well, go reach out to people building smart contracts. Go look at some of the smart contracts on GitHub. Go ask them questions. This isn't the end goal of what you want to do, but if you reach out to those people actually building this, you're going to learn a lot more than the content can provide. In addition, reach out to experts, reach out to them on Twitter, reach out to them on LinkedIn, just ask them relevant questions. And I think that's important. Make sure that if you ask them questions, make sure that it's a short question that they can easily answer. Don't come to them with vague questions. Make sure it's really concise, very structured questions, but you'll be surprised how quickly you can learn. And I'm sure your student listeners are already doing much of that.
For sure. And last question, skeptics. For people that say, these are just buzzwords, or they don't really get it. They're like, oh, you're trying to replace mentors, or you're trying to get rid of teachers. What would you say to them? And what would you say about the future of education and AI interacting?
Yeah, so currently in education, $1.5 trillion is being spent on bloat, which doesn't directly impact learners or teachers. This is a tremendous amount of bloat. What we're doing is we want to focus on learners and experts. Let's empower them. Um, is this a buzzword? Like, hell no. This works in refugee camps. This works for my daughter. Like traditional educational approaches aren't going to reach these kids, the majority of kids in the world who don't have access to quality schooling. Like we need to get over this. Like, current educational system is failing us. We need solutions. Currently, there's 600 million kids who don't have access to quality education. There's 250 million kids who don't have access to education, period. We are not solving this problem. There's no solution to these kids today. And if we continue on the current path, there's only going to be a solution in 45 years. It's going to take 45 years for us to build enough schools and train enough teachers to reach these 250 million kids. That is not the answer. You know, we need an answer today. These kids deserve an answer today. And this solution can provide one of those answers, is my response.
Wow. Yeah, well put. So wrapping up, anything you want to promote or anything you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, if you want to learn more, the product is knowledge.io. Well, the website is knowledge.io, and it's spelled the way I would spell it because I'm dyslexic. So it's knowledge, NOLEJ.io. So NOLEJ.io.
Awesome. Well, hopefully I'll see you on Discord on the Ed3 DAO
Yeah, absolutely.
channel. And thank you so much for your time today.
Jake, really good to speak to you again. Bye.